Hi, welcome to the MemSQL Developer Livestream. Today we're going to look at aligning a camera. Today we're going to look at all of the things and start in with our edit system. So let's dive in. So we've got our database spun up. That's perfect. Here's our data. MemSQL is doing a great job at holding that data, both the JSON values and all the things. That's perfect. I've got the API spun up and the application spun up. Here's our application. So we've got a few visual things that we need to do. Yeah, that's interesting. Our about page is totally blank. Our product list, we can list products. We can dive in. That's really cool. So what we've got then is we've got the beginnings of a product catalog that we can then explore all the things. We have a list of products. We can go pick one and show the details, but we don't have a way to edit those products yet. Let's dig in and start making a CRUD app that will allow us to do this, an admin app, if you will. Now, we probably want to do some authentication around that admin app. We don't want just anybody being able to find that app and make those changes. So let's build out an admin experience. We'll use JavaScript web tokens, JSON web tokens for this, and use Passport.js for a really elegant mechanism of being able to automatically parse those tokens and do all the things. So let's dive in. Let's break out of this. Let's break out of this. Now let's start off by adding in the details for JWT. Passport is really cool. Passport is a JavaScript library that has plugins, not that unlike the middleware for Express, but these middleware are mechanisms of supporting various login mechanisms. So Google Auth, GitHub, they have one for local, that is local username and password, and they have one for JWT. So here's Passport JWT, and that's one of the libraries that we're installing now to get JWT support into our application. A JWT. So JWTs are this mechanism, this JavaScript mechanism of having this thing separated by these two dots. The first bit is the hash, the encryption details. The second bit is the payload. The third bit is the signature. So it's not encrypted, it's signed. And so we'll plug in our JWT as we get closer and dig into all the things there. Have we got our stuff there? We do. Let's pull up VS Code. We also want to start out building a admin interface, and it'll take us a little bit to install this. So let's begin. View create admin. I love this wizard where it will start to interview us and understand the capabilities and the features that we need, pulling in all the dependencies that it needs to be able to build that up. Go, 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 go. We may need to come back to this one. There we go. I would like to manually select features. Babel, let's use TypeScript, a progressive web app. Do we need a progressive web app in this case? It can't hurt. A router, let's use a Vuex store. That'll be really helpful. I don't think we need Sass, though that might be interesting in time. Linter, yeah. Unit testing, end-to-end testing, we added those last time later, so let's pick them straight away this time. Would I like to use class style syntax? Nope. Use Babel along TypeScript? Yes, I would. Use history mode? Yes. Let's use ESLint, and we'll save and fix on commit. We'll use Jest. Cypress is a great end-to-end test tool, and we'll put these in dedicated config files. Do I want this as a preset for future projects? If I were to do this a lot, that would make sense. But in this case, I'll say no. Okay, now that's going to go through installing things. Let's start building out the pieces that we need for the API. So what we can do then is we can start out by creating a test to identify the behavior that we want. Ooh, there's an upgrade to Minikube. That's interesting. Here is the test that we built, the integration test that we built to validate that our API works as expected. Let's build a new test to get that content into place. I'm just going to copy this test just to get us started faster. But we don't want it to do all of these things. Rather, in this test, let's say I should not show login info when not logged in. Okay, so we're gonna go to get API/auth, and we expect to get a 401. Now that 401, that will represent that we are not logged in. So now because we didn't log in at all, we just hit that get request and we get that you're not logged in. That's perfect. That API will be the spot where we go get our user info. Should equals some user.com const password equals some password. Let's assume that those are valid in our data store. Is that a thing? We'll see. We're going to post, and we're going to dot send as our body the email and password. So now we've done a post, and we expect this response to be a 200 to say that we've successfully logged in, and expect res dot body dot token to what is this? I lost my notes. We want the token to not be null, but we don't necessarily need it to be anything in particular. So let's say to be truthy. So it's truthy, it's not null or undefined. Now let's use that to say const token equals res.body.token. And let's do another one, act. So we'll do probably very similar things here. Now we're going to go get that content out of the request. So we're doing a get now to that auth system. Now we should get our user back. Expect status to be 200 again. Expect res.body.email to equal email. So we should be able to round trip that user. Now, more concerned with that we can log in and that we can get that user back. So that's perfect. If we run our test now, npm run test, we'll see that our original test succeeds and our two new tests fail. As expected, these new tests fail because we haven't written the code to do that. So just spins up. We can still see that these are installing. That's interesting. Okay, so those tests are doing what they need to do, and we know that they're going to fail. There we go. We've got 3 tests. The first one will succeed. We wrote that one previously. Ooh, it's taking us a little bit to connect to our database. That's okay. We'll let that go. Okay, so we need to be able to hit this API auth and do things. Let's create a route, and we'll say new file, auth.ts. And we can clone this off something like this, the product. Let's start there and just copy what we need to out of here. Here in this auth, though, we're not going to make database connections. We're doing a get to just slash get current user. We probably won't use the database yet. Okay, so get current user. VS Code is going awful slow today. Okay, so if request.user, then we want to say res.json request.user. Now there might be some pieces of that user that we don't want to hand back, but for now, that's probably okay. Otherwise, res.status of 401.json. Well, we don't have a user, so let's send back nothing. Perfect. So now that we've got our authentication in place, let's go, or rather, now that we have that get current user route, let's pull this in. Import auth router from /routes/auth, and we'll set that in place. app.use/API/auth as our auth router. Now, if we come back and run these tests, if we come back and run these tests, we see now that we have two that passed. In addition to the product test, we'll also get this first test. Ooh. We'll get our first test just validating that the status is set correctly. We'll get that 401 back. That's pretty cool. Ooh, here's this plugin into VS Code. Here's an extension, this jest extension that will actually highlight failing and passing tests automatically, this jest runner. And that's really cool. So hey, that test just went green. Perfect. Now to get the other test to go green, it'll take us a little bit more work. So we want to be able to post to this. Let's say router.post to slash is login. Export async function login. Request is a request and response is a response. Now const email and password from request.body. If not email or not password, return res.status 400.json. Missing email or password. Or actually, let's even be a little bit more generic. Let's say invalid username, invalid email, email/password. We don't want to give the attacker any more knowledge than they possibly need to do this. Okay, so now we have an email or password. So let's say const user equals await db.getUser, passing in the email and password. But for now, we don't have that table created. So let's say const user equals ID of 1 and email. That's an assumption. We're going to come back and fix that. Let's leave a note here. To do use database. But let's go get that user. And if we've got that user, now we need to log in. So that's where that's where we'll start to use JWT pieces. Let's grab some imports here from the Express content, or the JWT content. JSON Web Token is a library that allows us to parse and create tokens. And then Passport will grab the Authenticate mechanism so that we can plug into interesting things. Okay. Const secret equals process.env.jwt secret. We need something that is that secret key. We'll put that here in our .env file. So here in our .env file, we'll say jwt secret equals secret. Okay, we've got an encryption key now. Back here, const secret, if not secret, throw new error. Process.jwt secret is undefined. We don't want to accidentally encrypt our JWT without a secret. Const token equals jwt.sign. We want to sign the user data. We want that to be in our token. Here's our secret. And we'll say it expires in 6 hours. Now in time, we might want to make that expire longer or shorter, or perhaps we want to link into Azure Active Directory or Google Auth that will have their own expiry mechanism. But the cool part is because we're using JWT and Passport for that, it will validate that if this token is expired, it won't start to reuse it. That's perfect. So now res.json, the user, and the token. Now we're going to hand back the user in case in the UI we want to say, welcome, Rob, or show other details. In time, we probably want to parse that down to only the bare minimum of user details that we need. Right now, ID and email is pretty good, but we also may want to add things like roles. Is this role allowed to access those particular features? Okay, we've created the JWT. That's perfect. Here in our test now, we would expect that the first half of our test will pass. It will log in, and because we're not hitting a database to validate if this user and password is correct, all is fine. We'll get back those details. It will be 200, so I suspect that our test to here will pass. Now we do want to misuse this for test 2. Use the token for to get current user, and this part won't work yet. Test 1, log in. I'm not sure why it doesn't like this comment. Oh, it's because that's where the test failed previously. Okay, so let's start into Passport. I'm going to create a new folder called Services. I'll create a new file in there called passport.typescript. And let's start to dial in the Passport pieces. Import Passport from Passport. Perfect. Import callbackify from util. Callbackify is a really cool mechanism for turning callbacks into promises and promises into callbacks. Well, there's promisify and there's callbackify. Promisify will take a callback mechanism and turn it into a promise, and callbackify will take a promise and turn it into a callback. So we'll use that because Passport was built in the callback era. Import strategy and extract JWT from passport/JWT. Okay. Now we've got all of the things that we need to consume. So let's build a process. I'm going to say const secret equals process.env.jwt secret. And same mechanism, if not secret, then let's throw new error. Process.env.jwt secret is undefined. Now we won't start validating our JWTs with blank content either. Passport.use. Here in passport.use, we will say new strategy. And new strategy takes in two things, JWT ops and a method. So let's say verified JWT. Well, this method is a callback-based mechanism. And so let's put callbackify around it so that we can build a async method. Export async function verified JWT, JWT payload. And our job now is to validate that this JWT payload is as expected. JWT ops, const JWT ops. This will have a JWT from request, and we'll use extract JWT dot from auth header as bearer token. So that auth header as bearer token is really interesting in that that will push. Oh, and we didn't put that in our test. We'll need to come back to that. Secret or key is our secret. And we may choose to add additional details like issuer, mysite.com, or audience, mysite.com. These are additional properties that we may want to pull in if we have need for them. So we've got our options. This JWT payload, what is that JWT payload? Well, let's define a type for that. Const JWT payload. Export type JWT payload equals. Well, we have the ID that is a number. We have the email, which is a string. We have an EXP for when it expires. That's a number. And we have an IAT. When was it initiated? That's a number. That's the JWT payload. We're noticing that a lot of things actually mirror the user. So let's export type user equals all of these things. And so this is a user, and it's this additional stuff. Well, these have no business being in this file. Let's pull these out. Inside types, let's create a new file for auth.ts, and let's put those types here. Perfect. Back in passport.ts, let's import user and JWT payload from types auth. Perfect. So this verified JWT payload is of type JWT payload or undefined, not unknown, undefined. We don't know if it's set yet. Probably it is, but if it's not set, if JWT payload, then we will return null. This is not a valid user. Our job is to return the thing that we want to validate. So return JWT payload. We don't need to trim anything out of it. We could pick out the ID and use that later on in our auth mechanism, but let's just grab the entire JWT payload. Now in time, we want to probably do something like this. Const user equals await db.getUser by JWT payload.id. Go get the user by ID, and if the user doesn't exist, then we want to fail that. Add database call. But for now, just grabbing the JWT payload and pushing it across is perfect. Okay, so we've got this set up. Oh, I guess we didn't use user. That's cool. We've got this set up, but now how do we pull it into app? Well, probably we want to do it after we've set env config so that we have the contents of .env. So we probably want to do it, I don't know, right here. Passport.init. So let's import passport from /services/passport. I don't think we need the passport directly. Here's that passport, and so we'll run passport.init. Well, right now we're not exporting that init, so let's wrap all of this. Export default function init. And let's go grab all of those as our init function. Now we know by the time we're initializing things, we've got our secret set. We can go grab these details. We can use this passport.use, enter that new strategy, and we should be good to go. So the cool thing about adding this passport is that then here, once we've got that passport set, not there, once we've got that passport set, init does not exist on type passport. That is unexpected. I bet that's just a, it still thinks it's the old passport. There we go. So once init is done, now we have the ability to validate routes. So here right now, we're not doing anything about getting the, about reading that authentication token. We're just doing the get current user. So let's come in here and we will say, I would like to first authenticate. And we give it the strategy, so in this case, JWT. And then we're going to give it some options. Session is false. So the cool thing here is it will first run this authenticate method, and if that succeeds, then it will run get current user. So if this authentication doesn't succeed, we'll probably never get here. So unit testing this status message here, it's probably never going to happen, but we do have this mechanism of doing this authentication and then getting the current user. So now let's run our unit tests and see if that works. npm run test. The moment of truth. Go, 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 go. 2 passed. Ooh, init does not exist on type void. It really doesn't like that. Export default function init. App. Passport comes from services passport. Does passport also come up here? Let me go double check my notes. Oh, yes, we're exporting the method directly. So this is passport init. There's our function. And let's go call our function. There we go. So that function takes in nothing and returns nothing, and it will go do that process of initializing all the things. Perfect. I'm glad we had that unit test to be able to catch that typo. Let's run our build, run the tests. Ooh, all of our tests passed. Ooh, no. We received a 401 coming back because we forgot to authenticate here in this test. So we're doing this get, but we also need to send some headers there to send the token back. Let's do this. .set authorization. The authorization header we want to set to bearer. We said it was a bearer token, and we'll set bearer plus token. There we go. Now we're doing that authentication piece, and so now we should be able to get our data back. npm run test. Score! We have passing unit test. That is awesome. So now how do we consume this? cd admin. Now in our admin app, we already have Vue created, but we probably want to also add Vuetify. So Vue add Vuetify. And Vue add Vuetify will also interview us to do some really interesting things. There are uncommitted changes. Yes, I would like to go. We haven't done anything yet with this, so let's just do the thing. Now we could definitely create more unit tests around these. This passport init mechanism. There isn't a whole lot that we can validate here because passport is kind of this opaque stateful object, but we could definitely do some more tests around this getCurrentUser method, mocking out the different pieces here. We could perhaps do some more tests around login, and as we get closer to the database, that would definitely be a good thing to do. We can't really validate that jwt.sign works as expected, but we can see that it'll work, and maybe we can deserialize that JWT token to see its results. Okay. So what would I like? I would like to configure this. Use a pre-made template. Yes, I would. Use a custom theme. No, we don't need custom colors in this case. Use custom CSS variables. Nah. What icons would we like? Let's choose Font Awesome 5. Use fonts as a dependency for Electron. We're not using Electron, so let's say no. Use a la carte components. No, we'll pull in all of the components. I grant that that will make our bundle size a little bit larger, but it'll make working with these components a lot easier. Use Babel polyfill. Yes. We are in English. And now we've got the Vue CLI plugin fired up. So this will take a little bit to go through. While we're looking at that, let's dig in here. We now have an admin folder and an app folder, and much of the content between these two apps is really similar, so we can do a diff and kind of get a feel for it. While it's still, so app here on the left, that's our original app that we built. Here's admin that has slightly different selections. We definitely don't need the gitignore. We have a gitignore in our root folder, so let's delete that. Pop open eslintrc. Yeah, probably all of the choices that we made in ESLint still apply, so we can do that. And while this is going, we don't want to be too intense in this. We definitely don't want to pop open package.json or anything, but we can take a look at tsconfig. We know that we needed to update this to work with Vuetify, and so let's grab those pieces. We definitely don't need a README. Let's delete that. Browserless. This is interesting. It added a not IE less than or equal to 10, so we would only have IE 10 and 11. Let's say we don't want IE at all. If you're using IE, then that's too bad. And we'll push that into our old app as well. Inside source, as it finishes building out this, oh, sweet, it finished. Let's say npm run lint -- fix. Now that we have our ESLint rules in place, this will update Vuetify with all the things. Perfect. Refresh this, and now we have some components. We have our hello world. Will we need our error component or loading component? Yeah, probably. We chose differently for our not found component would be helpful too. We chose differently for our icons, so we'll probably need to come back through plugins, Vuetify. See, now we're using Font Awesome instead of the built-in Vue icons, or the Vuetify icons. We've pulled in the Vuetify CSS file there. That works. This option may bite us later. We'll go see. Our router, we have different routes so far. That's okay. Yes, let's go grab Fetcher, pull that across. That'll work out well. We do have a Vuex store. That's perfect. Types, yeah, pulling in the product type might be helpful. Views, we have different views right now, and that's okay. In our main app, we have all the navigation for other pieces, but in this case, we don't have the Vue router yet. Let's pull in the Vue router. So we don't need the hello world component. We don't need that. But now we've got this working towards our Vue router page. That's cool. Here in main.ts, do we have anything? Well, we're pulling in the store. That's perfect. Babel config, did it do anything? Oh, yep, we've got some different presets based on preset env and preset react. I think we can leave those out for now. What does our jest config look like? Yeah, we're collecting coverage. Let's add that into place too. That sounds good. Our Vue config. Our Vue config tells us that we want to transpile Vuetify and we want to proxy API requests off to our API server. Let's copy that one into place too. We're starting to stretch now to see what additional content. You know, for example, looking in the package JSON, pulling in the license would be cool. Ooh, MemSQL's MemSQL Studio is running on port 8080, so let's give this a port of, I don't know, 5000. That works. We don't have Storybook in here yet, but we definitely do want to run both unit and end-to-end tests when we run npm test. We can take a look at some of the other dependencies that we have. It looks like newer versions have come out since we worked last. That's perfect. We'll use Flesh Promises for our integration tests, and we'll definitely use Axios, but I think we're doing pretty good right now. We did get the license in place, and that was the big piece. Okay. So we now want to pull in a few more dependencies. We're going to pull in Axios, and we'll also pull in TS Jest, which will give us some tests. This one is saving into our regular dependencies. The other one will save dev into our dev dependencies. And now let's take a look at that app. Right here. Here's that admin. Open with code. Oh, actually, I probably ought to let it finish installing before I open with code. Go, 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 go. So first up, we'll probably want to take a look at a login form. So let's go find Vuetify form. And let's see if Vuetify form has this mechanism for logging in. Ooh, forms. That's perfect. We want a form. Oh, that one looks good. Let's grab this form. I'm going to not copy all of that. Let's copy this content right here. And we'll definitely hack it up. But we also probably want to put that inside of a card. So Vuetify v card. And let's rig this up. npm run serve. Let's see how that works out. So our app will, in our app, we have the regular layout, we have the home page. Let's consider the home page our login page, and all the other pages will be authenticated. So here in our views, in our home, we can remove this hello world component, and let's instead add a login component. So let's pull in login from login. Okay, in our login component, components, new file, login.view. So template. We want to start out with div id equals login. Actually, I think we said c-login. And then let's do a v card. It will have a v card title. H1 login. And the vcard title, vcard text. Here's the rest of our stuff here, and that's where we'll put this form. So there's our form with all of the fields. We need to then end our vcard text. We need to end our vcard, and finally the end div. Sweet. Script type equal, or lang equals TypeScript, and style scoped. Perfect. Import view from view, export default view.extend. Now let's go grab that script from the form. So we want to, there's that piece. Here's our script. Perfect. That's interesting. It chose to indent further, but that's totally fine. So in these fields, we have a name. We probably want to swap this out with email. So we've got email next. That's perfect. Email. And we can say the next one will be of type password. And so we can have this be password rules. I don't think we need a counter, but it is required. We don't need a select. We don't need a checkbox. This button is perfect. We can't push it unless we're pushing the button. Let's say we want this to be of type block, so it'll be full width. The class, nah. And clicking validate, let's actually do that on form submit. We don't need these other buttons, so those are gone. And here on form submit, let's do this. At submit.prevent equals submit. Okay, so that will be the submit button we'll push when this happens. So here's password, and password is blank. Password rules. Password is required, and password must be, let's say, more than 5 characters. So rather than length is less than equal, let's say greater than equal to 5. Cool. Email. We don't have a select, we don't have items, we don't have a checkbox, so that's good. And here, it's the submit event that we're after. We don't need a reset or a validate. So let's start out with refs.form validate. If this dot valid, if not this dot valid, then we know that that form didn't work. If it did, let's say let's go submit the form. Const response equals await fetcher post to /API/auth. And we're going to pass in email is this.email and password is this.password. That's cool. Now it's an async method now, so async. We need to pull in fetcher. Let's go grab fetcher. Ooh, yes, I would like to import fetcher right there. Now this .form.validate is a little weird. Let's create a computed property that allows us to shim this to what we need it to be. Let's create form, and form will actually return this $refs.form as HTML form element. Now HTML form element knows how to do all the things. So now instead of reaching in there, now we can just call validate. That's perfect. So this .refs.form actually came from right here. We're calling this ref form, and so now we can reach into that element specifically. That's cool. So we've got this response back. We can say something like, well, if res.ok, OK is our method that says, is the status 200? Then we can do something like, well, where do we put the token? And then let's navigate to, I don't know, the about page. Perfect. If it's not OK, let's say this .login fail equals true. We want to show this login failure message. And let's just flip our signs so that we can exit early. Okay, so we need a login fail. Do we show this login fail message? This login fail message probably needs to go, I don't know, right here. Let's say v-alert. Invalid username, invalid email, password. That's pretty cool. Now this v-alert, we can go into the Vuetify docs and go look for v-alert. Alerts. And we can scroll through here. I think this error alert works. So let's look at that. Ooh, type equals error. Okay. Type equals error. And we're going to say v if login fail. So don't show it all the time, only show it if we are failing. Here, if we're submitting the thing, let's actually disable the button too, and not loading. So login fail, loading is also false. In time, we probably want to create an interface for this data object. But right now we can say, okay, this dot loading is true. And coming back out, we can say this dot loading is false. Ooh, we've got some TypeScript warnings here. This is of type string. And we probably need to make that move all the way along. This is also a string. This is also a string. This is also a string. Okay, so now TypeScript is a little bit happier there. Now, what do we do with the token once we succeed? Well, that's where the Vue store comes into place. This is a Flux-based store. A similar store is Redux in the React world. And so Vuex is that as well. We have our state. Let's set this to, I don't know, JWT is blank. Undefined. And we'll say email is also undefined. Now we have some various things. We have mutations that set our things. So we can say, here's a JWT mutation, and it takes in a context and, let me go double check. Nope, it takes in the current state, and it takes in a new thing. So let's say this is a JWT, which is a string, or an undefined. And then here in this method, we can say, well, method, we can set our current state, so state.jwt, to be our new JWT. So we'll do that for JWT, we'll do that for email, state, and JWT is of type, nope, not state, or email, which is of type string or undefined. And state.email equals email. So we need to put a type into this. Okay, export type Vue x data. That works. And here in this Vue x data, let's say this has a JWT, which is a string or undefined, and it also has an email, which is a string or undefined. And this definitely doesn't go here. Types. Let's create a new file, store.ts. Here's our Vuex data. And so now we'll import Vuex data from types store. Did we export it over here? I don't think we did. Oh, yes, we did. Very nice. Const default state of type Vuex data equals, well, we've got this state right here. Let's say that's that. But now our default state is typed. And the beauty of it being typed is now all of these mutations where we're changing the state, it can validate that those are correct. That's cool. So our actions are mechanisms that we can use to do stuff. So let's say we have an action of login. And let's also say we have an action of logout. And in our mechanisms here, we'll have a context. And that happens to be a type of action context. Store data, store data. Action context comes in through Thank you, VS Code. It comes in through Vuex. So there's our Vuex data. This logout will do things like if, we also need to pass in the new data. Logout actually doesn't pass in data. So let's say context.commit, we want to commit the JWT to be undefined. We'll do that for the email as well. Okay, so when we call the logout action, we're going to run commit, and behind the scenes, it will then go call this mutation to actually update the store. In login, we'll do a really similar thing. Let's grab our context, and we'll also grab a JWT, which is of type string or undefined. And, well, actually, let's just say that this is args of type login data. We'll go create that type in a second. So then we'll say const JWT and email from args. If we have a JWT, our goal is to log in. So we will go set these two properties into place. And if we don't have a JWT, then our job is to clear them. Now, I very specifically didn't just pass them in, because what if I have my email set, but I don't have a JWT? That would be interesting. So here, let's export type login data. And here we expect to have a JWT. And oh, look, we're building exactly the same as this Vuex data. So really, we could grab these and put them there, and then probably say something like it's a login data but as these things start to diverge later, let's actually do that differently. This login result, we can probably also use in other spots. So we'll just leave that as login result. We'll pull that here as login result. And then, oh, we need to import it. Thank you, VS Code. Now we've got our login result and we're ready to go. So when we call login, we'll go set our mutations. And now we may have some getters. Now getters are really interesting in that we can do computed properties in one place here. If we're just pulling the properties that we want out of the store, we can just reach into the store. I know in Flux or in Redux that's a bad move, but you don't need to wrap everything in getters in Vuex. So let's create is authenticated. We'll take in a state that is our Vuex data, and we will return state.jwt. Well, we're not going to return the thing itself. Rather, we will turn it into a Boolean. So now, if we have a JWT, we are authenticated. And if we don't have a JWT, we are not authenticated. Perfect. Now, modules is interesting. If we wanted to have all of these but nested for a particular namespace, for example, we could do that with modules. In this case, we're not going to do that at all. Okay, so back to our login component. We want to say import store from store. Now that we have the store, we can do things like, well, what do? Store dot dispatch. We want to dispatch the login mechanism, and we want to create a thing that is, well, email and token. We already have the email up here. We could pull it out of the results if we really wanted to, but let's say const token is res.body.token. That's where we left it. Res.body, res.data.token. And it doesn't know what type res.data is, so let's give it a type here. This type will be, I don't know, let's call it a login response. Now this login response is a smidge different than the store type here, login result. So login data. Let's call that login data. We'll go back into the store and fix that up. Login data. This one, login data. But here, this login response, we know that login response is a token, which is of type string or undefined. And we know that it also has a user, which is of type, I don't know, user. We'll probably use user in lots of other places. Export type user. User has an ID that is a number, and it has an email that is a string. So this could be a user or undefined, but we know that that's our login response. So now that we have our login response, then we know that this.res.data is of type login response, so we can reach in and grab the token. Well, if it's not defined. So let's say, or this or res.data or not res.data. Now TypeScript knows that we're going to do interesting things there. So this email, actually we need to pull into place from this.email. Or we could, let's define a private variable here. Const email equals this.email. And that actually makes this a little bit smoother as well. We'll pull that out of there. We'll pull that out of there. And now we've pushed that login success back into the store. Perfect. So the last piece that we want to do here in the app, we need to be able to show our login status. Right now we have this latest release button and it links off to nowhere. Let's have it link off to logout if we are logged in. So v if equals is authenticated. And we'll also create another v button, vbtn, if we are unauthenticated. So this one will say logout. And this, if not authenticated, we want to go to the home page and we want to say login. Perfect. Well, where do we get this is authenticated? We don't have a data. Let's say computed. Well, we could say here's is authenticated and go reach into this .store .da. That kind of gets redundant. So let's say map getters. Map getters is a helper method where we can give it the list of properties and it will automatically create an array of getters that does all of the things. We'll pull in map getters from Vuex, and now we have this is authenticated data property that just exists. That's perfect. So if we're unauthenticated, we'll show the login button. If we are authenticated, we show the log out button. Let's fire this up and see if this works. Localhost : 5000. Do we have one yet? Nope, we don't. Localhost 5000. Ooh, missing semicolon. Yeah, let's do that. npm run lint fix. Where was our missing semicolon in login.vue? I wonder. But I'm glad it's solved. Ooh, we've got this other lint error that says we're using any. I bet we can do a little bit better than that. Any. Where is the spot where we use any? Here in Fetcher we use any twice. Once to define this. Unknown is probably a better choice than any. And we also use any right here. Let's swap that out with unknown too. npm run serve. And now I suspect we'll have our mechanism. Build, 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 go, go, go. Okay. So we have our login page. We can log in with some email, some password. When we go, let's take a look at the Vue developer tools, which is really cool. We can switch over to Vuex mode, and it will be able to show us our state. Is authenticated as false. So we haven't yet gotten all of the things into place. Where did we mess up here? Here in admin, source, views. Ooh, passing in the ID instead of the class will be interesting for tests. Here in our home, last time I just hard-coded all of this into place. So I bet that's not it. But store.commit. Let's set a debugger here in our action. Oh, I bet I know what it is. Login.view. Store.dispatch login. I'm going to set a debugger here inside the store to go validate if we got the login set correctly. Now TypeScript's going to get all kinds of grumpy that we have a debugger in place, but I bet we'll be able to see it. Okay, log in with some form, log in with a password. Ooh. vContent is deprecated. Let's use vmain instead. I doubt that's the concern, but we may also need to leave this login. Vmain. There we go. Vmain. Oh, we didn't make this type password yet. We're not getting a click on our event. That is weird. So submit.prevent equals submit. Here is our submit method. That will be interesting. Well, we got quite far today. We haven't really finished